Hello, this is Unit 1, and I want to walk you through some of the slides and have you process some of the things that I'm presenting in the slide. And you'll be doing that on your interactive notes, and those interactive notes you can download from Teams. Let's look and find that really quick right here. So you will basically write down what slide number it is. So here, got a little handy little pen. I can say this is slide number 1. And the first thing I'm going to ask you from slide number 1 is thinking about what it means to live sustainably. What does that mean in your own words? And what would that world look like? If you look out the window right now, how is the world that we see different than a sustainable world? Because we know that we are not living sustainably. So what would you see that might be different? And so that's the first part of the question. How would it look different? Just, name 1 or 2 things. And then the second part of the question is, or the processing is, what would you be willing to give up in order to live more sustainably? So think about that. Remember, sustainability is the ability to not only have enough for our own generations, but to make sure that we are not using our resources too fast so that they have a chance to replenish themselves for every future generation thereafter. So going back to the slide, and so then you would write down, let's see, I'm going to look out the window, and maybe when I look out there, I might see more, and you can do stick figures, windmills. You might see more electric cars. You can draw. So how would I draw electric car? It's hooked up to a charging station. Maybe you would see more trees. So just kind of thinking along that line. And what is like one thing that you would be willing to give up? Now going back to the slides. So that is our first slide. And obviously, which picture is not living very sustainable is pretty obvious there. All right, so on to the next slide of what is environmental science. And this is the thing that I love about this course, is that environmental science not only includes all the natural sciences that we love, that I love, I don't know if you do, but also all the social sciences. So you're going to see a lot of tie-ins between my class and maybe your government class, or maybe your AP Human Geography class, where you're learning about demographics and population growth, where you're learning about politics and how politics can sway people to vote certain ways and funding to go for certain projects. How does economics influence environmental science? Is there money in our economy to put towards conservation, for instance? So it ties in those natural sciences, but also ties in all of those social sciences as well. It's very interdisciplinary. Okay. What it's not, what environmental science is not, is environmentalism. They are different, and not to get confused. Environmentalism is a social movement. You are trying to influence other people, trying to influence your government, to move toward a more sustainable future. But it's not really science. You think about science. Science is basically trying to describe, why do things work the way that they do? Whether it's good for the environment or not good for the environment, what is the answer? Why is it that, for instance, nitrogen is cycled through the biosphere? How is it cycled through the biosphere? How could we speed that up? How could we slow that down? Whereas environmentalism, kind of get the picture in your mind, if people are trying to cause change, create change, they might go so far as being naked on a glacier. You could look that up on YouTube. There's actually pictures of of people doing that who are basically trying to bring attention to global climate change. Now, that doesn't mean an environmental scientist can't be an environmentalist, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to work that way. So don't confuse the two. So for this part on your interactive notes, and this is your slide 2, I believe. There's no numbers here, so that's okay. We'll just call it slide 2. I want you to either describe or draw a picture of an environmental scientist and an environmentalist. How are they different? And those pictures need to somehow show that they're different. So, maybe you have a little stick figure in his little lab coat with his clipboard and his test tubes, and then an environmentalist, maybe they're in a demonstration and they're carrying signs and they're saying, no to the Keystone Pipeline, or don't deforest, we're not moving until you agree to not deforest this beautiful land. Something along that line. Okay, I am going to stop my recording. Okay, in order to achieve sustainability, we need to have 3 things in place. One being, that's 4 there. I'm going to talk about what that 4th one is, but 3, you have to have that constant input of the sun. You have to have a variety of life, that's your biodiversity. And you have to make sure that chemicals, such as nitrogen that I was talking about before, cycle through your environment, through the biosphere, through the atmosphere. Make sure that those chemicals keep going around and around. And here is a good little depiction of that. Without solar energy, plants aren't going to be able to make their own food. All life stops. Biodiversity, not only a variety of different species, but we have to have different ecosystems. We have to have a variety within a single species. Look at how different all of us are from each other. And you'll find that variety really does make for a healthier ecosystem. And then we have to make sure that chemicals continue to cycle through the environment. The 4th one that was mentioned on that last slide that used to be presented in, the author used to believe that the 4th principle was population control. We need to make sure that populations stay in check. And so that's kind of an interesting thought as to how do we make sure that, for instance, the wild horse population stays in check? How do we make sure that the human population stays in check? Kind of interesting things to think about because we only have so many resources. So just a couple pictures that go along with that. Nutrient cycling as you die. Think about all of the matter within your body. Hopefully is going to come back and become something else because matter cannot be created or destroyed. So you think about the atoms within your body. Think about it. They've always been here. What did you used to be? Your atoms could have very well been walking around with dinosaurs. It's kind of fun to think about that. All right. So I want you on your interactive notes to write down this formula. Natural capital is equal to natural resources plus natural services. So when you think about natural capital, when you think about capital, when a business has capital, what does it have? I think about it as it has a lot of money. It has a lot of value. So think about what value does our planet have and what makes up that value. And it's made up of 2 things. The things within the planet itself, the resources themselves, maybe that's plants, maybe that's the land where you could grow the food. So it's the things on the planet, and then the services that they provide. So think about the jobs that they do for our planet. So what I want you to do to get this idea is if I take the natural resource of a tree, I want you to write down a tree, and now I want you to come up with as many possible natural services that trees provide for us. So you're going to be doing that again on your interactive notes. And we'll call that probably on to number 3. So I want you to get like maybe 5 different things that trees do. Thinking about that. What do they do for our ecosystem? Getting back to... Just keep in mind, this is my first time doing this, so I am a rookie. That's okay. All right. So what the value of the planet is made up of what the planet has as far as resources go, and then what are all the jobs? So think about how bees pollinate, for instance. So for trees, hopefully you thought of things like they provide food. A money answer is that they provide habitat. They provide a home. You could think about the things that we use them for. Maybe we use them to make furniture and paper and resources such as that. Think about how they sequester carbon out of the atmosphere and pull that out. Think about how they hold the soil in place and prevent erosion. That's why we don't want wildfires, is that once those trees are gone and then you have a big rainstorm come, you're going to get a mudslide. So the natural services of trees, all the jobs that trees do for our planet. Okay, so this is a good little graphic that shows, I keep on moving myself around, some of the more examples. So you're going to have your natural resources are blue, and your natural services, those jobs, are going to be in orange. So just going over like one example, if the natural resource is land itself, what does land do for us? It provides food, it allows for nutrients to cycle through the biosphere and the atmosphere and the geosphere. Think about another one. You think about that atmosphere, that air. What are some of the jobs that air does for us? Protects us from UV rays, that ozone layer. It regulates climate. So think about jobs when you're thinking about services. What service can I provide for you? Okay, natural capital degradation. We take the value of our planet and we degrade it. And this is an awesome example of it. Number one reason we deforest. Number one reason is, what are they making here? What are they trying to do? So plowing fields, basically. And that is the number one reason why we are depleting our forests, cutting down the Amazon rainforest is so for agriculture, to grow generally like cash crops, such as tobacco and soybeans and palm oil, things like that. So I think I wanted you to do another interactive. Going back to that slide. Let me go backwards. Okay, so I want you to come up with another example of natural capital degradation. What is another example of how we are basically using our resource so fast that it's not able to replenish itself? Okay, so maybe you thought of something like overfishing the oceans. Maybe you thought of something like use of fossil fuels, not only polluting the air, but making climate change even worse. All right, so resource, anything that we can get from the environment. Inexhaustible is something that's always going to be available. Hopefully the sun's not going to stop shining anytime soon. And renewable resources are basically something that we can get back. If we use it, we can get it back, and it might come back really quickly, or maybe it'll take several hundred years, but it's still renewable. And then non-renewable, we are not ever going to get it back. So sustainable yield, think about how fast can you use something. You don't want to use it so fast that it won't replenish itself and you'll run out of it. So the highest rate at which you can use it without completely diminishing it and making it become non-renewable. That is your sustainable yield. Okay. And then here's your non-renewable resources. There's only so much on the planet. Once we use them, we use them. So how do we make sure that they last forever? There are 5 R's. Can you think of them? Reuse, I'm only going to give you 2, I think. Recycle. So if you're reusing something and you're reusing it for the same exact thing over and over again, maybe you're using a paper bag and you just keep on using it. Recycle it. What are the other 3 things? If you can think of them, I bet you can get 2. Hopefully you got reduce how much you use. That's going to help it last longer. Another one is repurpose. Maybe I have a red solo cup